Hello and welcome to the Boudica Music Conference. This is the Communities panel. The title of our discussion today is Protecting Communities at All Costs. I'm your chair, Fayann Smith. I'm the co-founder of Temple Shift Digital Creative Studio, and I've been hosting alternative events for 2 decades. On my left, I have Lewis G. Burton from Inferno, Judy Griffith from Fabric, Charlie Deakin Davies from the TCC, and T. Craven from Fold. So before we start, could you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your primary projects?
Hi, I'm Lewis G. Burton. I run a club night and collective called Inferno, which has been going for nearly 8 years now. And I don't know, there's been many iterations throughout the years, but we're kind of in this new chapter of like supporting the most marginalized in our community, which is usually trans people. I also a part of the collective for London Trans Pride as well.
Do you want to disappoint? Am I on? Oh yeah, I am. I'm Judy Griffith, and I do all the programming at Fabric nightclub. I do Saturday nights, sort of house techno night, and I've been programming that for about 20 years. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. Yeah, and we're like working on like our usual support of the nightlife community and different tribes, and yeah, I'm just sort of moving forward, trying to kind of like take on board the new chapter of the way people are now, like since the pandemic, and trying to embrace much more communities than we were before previously. So hopefully you guys can help us to change that. You?
We'll be there.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Charlie Deakin Davies. I'm a record producer and songwriter, sort of as myself as a person, but I also am the co-founder of the Trans Creative Collective, which is something that officially launched in January of this year, and I did it with my best friend Max. And the general concept of what we do is we put on live events, workshops, and gigs and socials. And the reason we sort of made it, which is maybe in our own naivety, because there is probably other organizations similar to us, but we couldn't find them. So we set up the TCC, and we literally put on these workshops to try and get people more jobs, to streamline people into the industry. But also we just want people to connect and socialize. And we now have a directory of like loads of trans people who, and non-trans as well, because our general policy is inclusive, not exclusive. So literally everyone is welcome to every element of the TCC. We don't ever say that somebody can't come to our things. So yeah, that's the TCC.
Hi, I'm T. I work for Fold. I've been working on and off for about 3 years now. I look after the social media and merchandise and a couple of other bits and bobs here and there, including working on the Unfold party that we do on Sundays. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Amazing panel we've got today. I just want to read a little something here for you to put this discussion in context so you understand exactly what we're talking about. When the pandemic hit the UK in 2020, the conditions of lockdown rapidly accelerated the decrease in alternative spaces for both nightlife and community expression, with many clubs closing their doors never to open again and cuts to cultural funding across the board. Marginalised groups who are crucial to the UK's cultural success have found themselves without spaces to connect and thrive. The government has failed to appreciate the significance of accessible space for community building, in the process ignoring the fact that countless culturally lauded movements had their genesis in the sanctuary of alternative nightclubs and hangouts. Now that we're able to congregate in public again, the panellists will reflect on various aspects of the lockdown, including alternative ways they continue to engage with the community and the insight and inspiration they found despite their isolation. Question 1. What communities do you feel were most crucial to your work, and what do you think has transformed for those communities post-pandemic? We'll start with Lewis and we'll go.
Yeah, for me, like, as I said, we've got like Inferno's been through many different iterations, and kind of what it stands for. Like, I think the conversation we've been having right now is to more celebrate the trans community. There's still a huge lack of representation for trans people within electronic music, within the performance art scene or the wider art scene in general. So yeah, we're working to tackle those, and it really runs hand in hand with my work at London Trans Pride as well. What was the second part of the question?
What do you think has transformed for these communities during the pandemic? And I'm leaving it broad, obviously, because we all intersect with different communities. But have there been any noticeable lasting changes?
I mean, things have gotten much worse for trans people, especially within the UK. We have a very extremely conservative government that is stripping away trans people's rights on what it feels like on a daily basis, and we're being used as political fodder. Yeah, there's not really many good things happening right now outside of what we are doing as a community, but in terms of like the actual political landscape right now within the UK.
Well, I represent the nightlife community, and I think like post-pandemic, I feel like our community is like a lot more open, a lot more informed, a lot more educated, and I feel like we're like coming together like more with the nightlife community, and sort of it's accepting, going back to like more like the roots of like where this community came from in the first place, where it was all about like different tribes, different like minority groups like coming together like through music on the dance floor. That's where it started. That's like why I was attracted to it, because I could see people like me being represented on the dance floor and like-minded people that I was talking to. And like over the last decade, before the pandemic, it all became very segregated, I believe, and everybody was going to their own spaces and there was no unity. I feel post-pandemic that's slowly coming back. Don't get me wrong, we've got huge, long steps to go, but I do feel like people are, certainly within my world, like people want to be together more. They're much more accepting of different people. It's much more diverse. We're seeing more diverse dance floor as well, which is absolute joy for me, like to see different people coming back and enjoying the space. That was actually pretty much going down one lane before the pandemic in terms of the audience.
So quite a lot of positive shifts then, as well as the sort of negative kind of shrinking of the actual spaces available. The spaces that do exist have become more diverse and more kind of responsive to experimentation.
Yeah, most definitely. Like, you know, we've been doing different nights at the club, which we wouldn't have normally done before the pandemic, and they've been so well received. I'm just like, you know, I walk around, I'm just like, I'm so happy to see people feeling, you know, good enough to sort of express themselves within the walls of Fabric, which is not known necessarily for like all inclusion. We were for like the first decade, like we used to have LGBT night on a Sunday, and then that stopped after 10 years, and now we're kind of like embracing it all again and trying to bring it all back in. So I don't want to ramble on.
No, I mean, it's all really valid. Wait, were you going to say the question again?
I can say the question again for you, because it's been a little while, hasn't it?
Yeah.
What communities do you feel are most crucial to your work, and what do you think has transformed for these communities post-pandemic?
I mean, I would say one of the biggest life-changing things that has happened, ironically, is TikTok. I cannot explain how much that has personally changed my life and personally changed the life of so many people around me. And I would say one of the biggest things was there was so much educational information on being transgender, non-binary, queer things, just general identity. And because there was that time of reflection during the pandemic, I think a lot of people really looked in on themselves. So we went into the pandemic with like, I don't know what percentage of people that weren't trans. I mean, if you look at how many people are out now in any capacity, it's the community has like, I would say easily quadrupled. My friend group alone, I would say about 80% of them came out in some capacity during the pandemic. So from that perspective, I see it as like a huge thing. Like we are just building in numbers inevitably now. So it just contributes to this amazing like world in which we're putting these events on. But it is difficult because on a governmental level or on an external level, it is being crunched smaller and smaller. Yeah. But I would say it's been huge and kind of amazing, the pandemic's effect on the queer community.
Yeah, I mean, to echo most of the thoughts here, the trans community plays like obviously a big part on my work and how I go about my life. I would say that so when I work at Fold, everything I do, I use my life experience to kind of affect what Fold does. So whether it's being searched by securities to give people the chance to choose which security they want, rather than being told you have to go to this, you have to go to that. That's or like gender neutral bathrooms, or just like little different things that you don't really experience as a cis person. It's kind of like it's not that people are against it. It's kind of like that they just don't think of it. I would say that over the pandemic, since the pandemic's come back, or since the pandemic's finished, I would say that our crowd's a lot more open to trans people. There's a lot more visible trans people in the crowds. Visibility's increased. But I would say that it's more important than ever to be shouting about being open to trans people. Like employers and business people need to be making more a stand. Like whether, no matter what, like Liz was saying about the government attacks, I would say that it's more important than ever to know that you're in a place where you're safe, and the only way to do that is by the place that you're in to be shouting about it.
Great, okay. So could you tell us, and we'll do this in the same way, beginning with Lewis, about your personal experience of community during the pandemic? What impact did COVID have on your feeling of social connection? I know from my point of view, it was very hard to feel particularly connected to anything. It was very discombobulating. A lot of my life was mediated via the internet. It was already, and then it became massively focused. And that's quite a deranging space to be in when you're not seeing human faces and actually having interaction. So how did you get through it, and how did you stay connected to the people that you care about?
I mean, I think we're very lucky and privileged to like had technology to be able to do that. I feel really grateful that I got to see my friends' faces. It might have been on the screen, but at least I got to still connect with them in some degree. Yeah, I don't know. What was the question again?
Well, how did you maintain your sense of social connection? Because it's one thing to be able to talk to people piecemeal on a daily basis, but we have communities we're part of, and that community is part of our identity. So did you lose that feeling? Did it grow?
Definitely. Like, I've been out in nightclubs since I was 13 years old in Newcastle, and that transition from Newcastle to London was in queer nightlife. And I've never not been in a nightclub for 15 years, and suddenly I'm sat in my bedroom 24/7. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Who the hell am I when I'm not in a nightclub? Which was like painful, and there's a lot of grief there at some point when I'm not with my community. I'm not in these spaces that I'd came to know and love and become a part of me as well. But then, as Charlie was saying earlier on, it really gave me time to sit with me and really like check in with myself and check in with my gender identity and these things. And as a result of that, I'm still identifying as like gender non-conforming, but like I'm on estrogen now because I'm like, fuck the way that testosterone's fucking up my body, and I can change that, And if I didn't have that time and space to really like sit with myself and away from the nightclub, who knows where I would have been right now? I might have been really unhappy, And it really given me time to just take stock and check in, which I think is so important that we all do that with ourselves and take that time.
Yeah, it's good to hear that, because I remember we did this panel previously, sort of mid-pandemic, and it was a really difficult period for you. I remember you were quite distraught. It seems like the journey's kind of gone into a much more positive phase, and I hope that that's reflected for most people at this point with hindsight.
Yeah, for me, I guess I realised that it wasn't just the music that I was missing. It was like the community and around it, and that I needed that community to actually thrive. And without them, I was just nothing. I was just like, what am I doing with myself? Like, I really, there's a really thin line between my work and my life, as it were. And so without that work and like my support network, my family, I realized how much I put into my work and my life. And actually, I guess in the end, the way of coping with it was like you, being on Zoom and seeing my friends sort of digitally, but also taking that time to reflect on myself in the end, and sort of, really thinking about what my purpose was and where I fit into everything. And actually that was really good and cathartic in the end. Sort of, I needed to do it. And I also needed to appreciate maybe my life-work balance and making that a little bit more equal and not putting 99% of my life into this one thing all the time, because look, I never thought it was going to go. I never thought I wouldn't be there anymore. So it made me sort of look at other things and do more with my life and actually sort of enjoy some of the passions that I actually have that I never have the time to indulge in. So, even if it was just reading a book from cover to cover, just all these simple things that people take for granted that I don't really get the chance to do because I'm in my little loop, my little work bubble. So actually, I think in the end, as depressing as it was for a time, I actually came through it really positively. It was just a case of unpacking all that angst and all that stuff that you didn't want to deal with before. You had to face it and deal with it. So yeah, I feel like I came out of it in a really much more positive way and much more accepting of my life and what I do and appreciation of the people around me. I feel really blessed now that that I have all these people that are supporting me and loving me and helping me to elevate, So I think the pandemic, as negative as it was, I think some of us were able to get some real positive outcome out of it. So definitely me.
Yeah, I just want to echo that and be the gratitude of what I have now and the community I have now, and being active in nightclub spaces again, and being able to see and be with my communities, something I will never take for granted ever again. Because I'd taken that thing for granted every single time I was in a nightclub. I thought this thing would be permanent, it would be there forever.
Yeah.
As a result, I become a bit jaded,
Yeah.
And I have this newfound love for it and appreciation for it.
That's it, and that's what you were saying earlier on about people coming, back after the pandemic and how they changed. I think that was because all of us sort of just had to sort of look within ourselves. And for me as well, with the Black Lives Matter thing coming up, sort of for me it was again, it was a lot of stuff that I don't really think about and I hadn't really thought about in my life, with opposed to my culture, and it was again a real wake-up call for me, and stuff that I might have stayed silent about before. Actually, that time has now given me more confidence to use my voice and to actually speak about how I feel, really, without worrying that someone's going to get upset by something that I've said. You know what I mean? So it also gave me a more confidence in myself to sort of speak out about stuff that maybe I might have buried before or might not have sort of said anything. So yeah, that was a good thing, another good thing for me.
Do you want to go before me so that you're not always last?
It's very kind of you. I would say that I have come out of it much stronger. I think the pandemic, in a way, has been the best thing that's ever happened to me, in the fact that it's forced me to stop and reassess everything. And I think instead of spanning myself so wide and trying to talk to everyone and try and just keep everyone happy, I've now been able to focus on just a small quality group of circle around me, and that's kind of made me so much stronger, because I'm able to spend quality time with people who generally love me and want to build me up, and so I've been able to build myself up from that. So yeah, that would definitely grateful for that.
Yeah.
I think an interesting perspective as well is there is entirely new groups and communities that have come out of this. I personally wasn't part of a queer scene other than just my friend group before that, and that was a coincidence. I mean, they all gravitate together, don't we? But I mean, seeing this younger generation who are so much more informed and have so much access to information that I think we all could have were begging for when we were younger. They just literally have instantly. Yeah. And so they go into this so much more informed. They make these amazing events, they make these amazing organizations and everything. And I think that has meant a complete flourishing of brand new queer people who have not experienced the same type of traumas that we have. And I'm not saying that they won't or that they haven't, but they come in with a completely fresh perspective on this. And I just think that that's something that is the energy that is going to be pushing through the queer community as it expands. And I think that's, a direct result of the pandemic. And I just think that's amazing. Yeah.
So have you found that there's been an increase in sort of emotional support, and because community is a very nebulous thing, isn't it? We all experience it differently. And I guess that's something actually I would like to ask you. What is your experience of community? When you discuss community, what does that actually mean in real terms to you? Because I guess it's different for everybody. Because I would say that people are a lot more able to discuss their emotions. That's one of the changes that I've seen. Mental health in particular. Just in the last 10 years, people being able to articulate their mental health situation and say, I need a break. That's a massive sea change. We do have a hustle culture and this idea you should constantly be productive. But what is your sense of community? What does that actually mean in your everyday life? How does community manifest?
I guess, I don't answer that, because I refer to my community all the time. They're kind of it's just a crew of people that are like-minded and, similar ethos, maybe from all walks of life, sort of diverse, and, lots of people that look like me and you, and just a whole sea of people all kind of coming together with similar values. And I guess that's my community, and as I said, I couldn't live without them. They're my family. It's an extension of my family community, I guess.
So this is, some beyond your family work, employment opportunities, emotional support. These are the kind of things that you can reach out to the community and look for, basically, and know that you'll be accepted.
Yes. Yeah. It's a place of safety for me, being around them.
I mean, I'd say a big thing in a physical community of when you're actually meeting up. When we ran our first ever event, which was we didn't know what we were doing, it was this creative explosion of loads of different fields and stuff. A really weird side effect was the fact that because everyone there was presumed to be some form of queer, you didn't need to talk about it, ironically. And so so what you did was you just talked about your music, your art, your film. You weren't self-conscious about someone going oh, why are you using that pronoun? Or you don't look like this, or you should be dressed like this, or that moment of when you go to say your pronoun or your name, that moment of are they gonna be okay with it? Because you just knew that they would, and there's so many spaces where that happens. And what that meant was then people got so much more confident in themselves, but more confident in talking about their work and not being scared about what's going to happen. And then that's had a huge knock-on effect into the various job roles that we've put people into, because now they just know how to be themselves, they've explored themselves, and then they are doing that professionally. And I think that's a huge part of the community that has been a really nice thing to facilitate.
Great, okay, thank you, Charlie. So before I ask the next question, I'm going to give you a little bit of alarming data to put it in context. Are you ready for this alarming data? Figures from the Association of Licensed Multiple Retailers, the ALMR, show that between 2005 and 2015, the number of nightclubs in the UK shrank from 3,144 to 1,733. This dramatic fall in event space further accelerated during the pandemic, leading to the closure of 1 in 5 of all remaining nightclubs. My question is this. Would you agree that the government is failing to understand the significance of providing the space and resources that have been historically significant for underrepresented groups? And we'll start with T for a bit of a mix-up.
Ooh, throw it back on me. Yes, I would agree.
There we go.
I would say that I think for a government that is majority cis, white, straight, they don't really have appreciation for surroundings that enable them to learn about themselves and discover things. And there's not really a space. There's never really been a space for them where they've needed a safe space. And so I think they don't appreciate the need for safer spaces like nightclubs, and they don't really appreciate how much you can learn from a nightclub. Like a nightclub is like a playground to queer people. It's a place where you can experiment and try new things. Some things might work, some things might not work, and then the things that you do work, you can take that to your wider life and take that into the wider world. And for a government that's not queer, that's just all white, it's they just don't have that knowledge and that appreciation for it. And I'm fizzling out, so I'm going to pass it on.
Oh God, really? Okay. Well, I mean, I could probably talk for ages on the subject, but I think it's really sad that like most kind of local governments and stuff are still stuck in this old school narrative about nightclubs, and you know they see them as like just places where people just want to do drugs and get really high, and so they just treat them as second rate places. And you know, we all know that you know, nightlife now and clubland, club culture is, for me anyway, it's like, I feel like it's like a, you know, we're a new age community centre, you know, like honestly, like they're places of education. They're places where people can kind of come and meet as a community, like you might have done in the old days, gone to the local community centre and like, you know, got together with like-minded people and did like-minded stuff. That's what they are. They're like places where people are not only educated, but they're meeting other people, and other creative ideas are spawned from those buildings. Like the amount of things that have knock-on effect of people meeting up inside Fabric and what has come from that is just incredible. It's like, it's overwhelming. Like, and people, you know, those people in local government, they don't realise that. Like I look at somewhere like Fabric and I'm like, why are we not treated like the Tate or the Barbican even? Just because we're delivering a different form of music doesn't mean that we're any less or offering any less than these institutions. You know, and like during the pandemic, we actually kind of, I wanted to take it that we did, because we had a little bit of the grant from the Arts and Culture Fund, and it was given to a lot of, you know, institutions like Royal Albert Hall or, you know, those kind of places. And when we got that, we actually thought, you know what, we're feeling like they're kind of validating us a little bit as an institution. And that actually meant more than anything that they were going to give us, because it was suddenly we're being recognized by our peers that like on an equal, bit more of an equal level, you know? It's like, so this is really, really important, because when local governments do accept nightlife as culture, then we can start evolving.
And isn't it bizarre that they don't do that already? Because if you look at the history of British culture, magazines are founded, bands are formed. We go on to generate billions for this country, and it happens in nightclubs.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the only places where it's not based on class. You know, look at Blitz. If you had a look, you get in. Do you know what I mean? If you can throw a look together, if you can come out with an idea, you'll be able to get in and be part of broader culture. And that doesn't happen in anywhere else. So it does seem extremely short-sighted.
Yeah, I just echo that. Like, nightclubs, especially queer nightlife, has played such a huge part within the history of like art, music, fashion, culture, performance. And then, you know, think of all of these like amazing people that have came from nightlife. You know, Alexander McQueen is like one of the most iconic fashion designers of all time. And like he came up through the nightlife system, and like look at all of that money that's provided and trickled into the economy. Or like even a newer example of like Ollie Alexander from Years and Years. Ollie was performing at nightclubs when I was performing at nightclubs 10 years ago, back in East Block, you know. And now he's selling out like stadium tours around the UK and around the world. And economically, we provide so much, so much. And we need to be recognized. Like the government needs to take heed and listen to us and understand we have so much cultural value and economic value for this country. We provide education, we provide new ways of thinking, innovation. We really are really something so special. And it's great that places like Berlin are recognizing their nightclubs as institutions. And it's about fucking time the UK government started doing that too, because we do so fucking much for everybody, for the general public, for the arts, for culture, for music. Without us, this country would be shit.
Yeah. Well
Can't argue with that. So with this in mind, what kind of action can we take on a community level to stop that fragmentation and to gain more space and traction? What are you doing personally? What can we do as a group to sort of provide access to resources and to make the government understand what's at stake?
So recently we started a thing called the London LGBT Promoters Union. It kind of hasn't happened for a few months because nobody did the next meeting. So that needs to like start again, and we need to get the ball rolling with that and like actually unite all these community leaders and promoters across London, not just within the queer scene, but the wider thing. Work with venues, work with people like yourself, Judy, you know, and come together and demand actual change and lobby for this change and be like, we need to be recognized for the value that we provide to this country, you know. And then it's only until then can we make stuff happen and we can actually get change, we can have a leg to stand on. So that's one way of doing it.
Yeah, it's just like, I guess sort of by having more role models and like putting, you know, having people visible in those kind of spaces, we need to kind of get our people into those kind of organizations, into those systems. So because...
Sorry, just let me stop you. So when you say our people, we're talking about obviously people who are already active. And what do you think the barriers are, just quickly, from your experience?
It's really hard to get a seat at those kind of tables, you know. That's the hard thing, is like, because for me, like, you can't really evolve with, and if you see something like, if it's visible and you see it, then you can change it. If you see more and more people doing that thing, or more and more people in those kind of spaces, then you're going to feel like you can evolve. You know, you can't really recognize people's full potential until there is role models there. It's like visibility is key, but it's just how to get those people into those spaces, or do they even want to be in those kind of spaces? They want, you know, like, they're all a bit corporate, aren't they?
Yeah, but I think we need to all come together and unite. I think, you know, rather than just having one or two individuals leading a collective thing, we should all be sitting at the table together and demanding a seat at that bigger table, you know, and be representing, you know, like, we could all meet at Fabric once every 2 months and like,
and
you know, literally, why not? Every promoter from London or from around the UK, if they want to travel down, every promoter, every venue manager and every venue owner, every DJ, every performer, every person that works for the nightlife, we come together. The collective power that we have. Oh my God, the hundreds and thousands of people that have came to our parties over the years, like that collective power of like being like, no, we have all of these people behind us as well.
Yeah.
We could shut down the country.
We absolutely could. I mean, we know from when our club got closed down for 6 months, but you know, it was the power of the people that actually got us back open again. It's all that global family, like, coming together and saying, no, this is just not right. We're not going to have this. And that's kind of what we need, another sort of like global mobilization from all of our people. Right?
I think it's also about using your voice as well. Like for people, for organizations that do have a voice. For example, like Fold, we have 40,000 followers on our Instagram. And so since I've taken over doing the social media, I've like made it a goal to like push as many queer people as I can on the feed. Like whilst I can't change the music industry as such, I can still push in other places, like for like mixed series, like we try and push as many queer people. Or if there's an artist on the lineup that's queer, I'm going to put that as the face of the post rather than perhaps someone else, for example, and just like trying to push it in different ways. Like I think if you've got that voice, because whilst someone with 200 followers shouting about it is great, someone with 40,000 just has so much more access. And especially as when we have, like our club, we have lots of different people from lots of different areas, lots of different countries, and lots of different types of music. If one or two of these people in those circles see that message and has that change, they might take it to somewhere else, and that might spread. And I think it's, when you do have that platform, you should use it.
I completely agree. I mean, our organisation is really small compared to like all of the others because it's so new. That's me just hoping, like we'll be big one day. But I think one of the things as well that we are doing is we're collaborating with a lot of trade bodies, and we also collaborate with UK Music, which is the government arm that represents music to the government. So we are involved in like various things, and like funneling information through. I mean, for instance, UK Music did a diversity survey last year, and it's not their fault. Well, it is their fault. I don't know. I like UK Music, so whatever. But basically, so such a small percentage of people put like something that wasn't male or female, that they decided just to not put it in the data. So anyone who was like gender non-conforming, trans, genderqueer, gender fluid, anything, were just not included in the statistics for the music industry. And it's just because it was a small percentage. And it's just like that kind of stuff is exactly what the problem is. So we basically do like consultancy and stuff. So we go into organizations and companies, and we do consultancy on their surveys and things like that to try just like sort it out. Like, what the hell? But yeah, so that's like a way that like communities and stuff can get involved in helping to change those sort of things as well.
So visibility and some very savvy power broking there, getting inside. Because representation, I find, can very often be in photographs.
Right.
And then you go to the gatekeepers, and they look the same as every other gatekeepers you ever met in your life. It's like, we've got these really diverse pictures of all these people on the dance floor, but you're in the boardroom with the same dudes that you were in the boardroom with 20 years ago, and that's been my experience. Well, even now, because there's a lot of diversity talk, but diversity action is a bit thinner on the ground. So going back to something actually that you brought up earlier, Charlie, which was the internet. And the internet has become a focal point for community building, with many groups existing primarily online. What do you see as the positive and negative aspects of this reliance on technology and virtual contact? And you can start, actually.
Just an easy one.
I mean, the negative side is the side that has always been there since people have decided they want to be mean to other people. Like, the internet is just a very quick way to be mean and horrible and galvanize people. So there's obviously the negative side in that capacity that is hard to manage. And I work with a lot of like famous TikTokers, and I cannot believe the amount of hate that they will get for things. They're not even necessarily trans or whatever. Like, so much so that Universal Music have now had to put a new branch into their company, which they should have kind of done ages ago anyway, specifically for mental health therapy for social media. So that, I think, is like a side effect, but it also is proof that the major record labels are taking how severe the mental toll is on social media and being a public figure, and then also people speaking on topics like that. So.
I mean, that's really shocking to think about it, because now social media management is intrinsic to your job as an artist. You cannot avoid it. So the fact that you're being exposed, aside from the vulnerabilities of presenting your work, you're just exposed to complete vitriol from every angle.
Literally, two of the female TikTokers I work with just literally get just like, you're a woman as an insult, or just like literally like, it's just like, it's mad. It's like it's so dumb, and it's like a barrage, and like basically if you end up on the wrong side of TikTok, you're messed up. Like, it messes you up. It messed up one of the artists I was working with, algorithms so badly that when she got signed and they did all the release and everything, it was capping, like her videos would get like millions of views before, and they're literally getting tens of thousands now because the hate comments were so strong that then she felt too scared to post, and then TikTok then was like, well, you're not posting, so your algorithm's gone. And so now, I mean, she's building back up again now, but like, it's just really sad, like, just how at mercy. And because these people's careers were developed out of them doing their own social media, when something goes wrong with the social media, their career is like really messed up. So anyway, I think that's like a negative side effect. I know that's not specifically about like queerness, but I just think about like, this is a very delicate ecosystem that we're playing with of people's entire lives and everyone that works with those artists.
Well, you brought up the key word, algorithm, there, which is this sort of black box of parameters that nobody fully understands, that can make or break your career. And it's not being particularly kind to queer people and queer movements, because it's like, oh, that's sexual content, and it's like two people just stood there. Like, this is something that's happened.
Yeah, I mean, the first video we ever put out on our social media, we had 0 followers to start with, but it got like 6,000 views, like in the first day, which is like a lot for no followers. And then someone reported it, or it got taken down for minor child safety or something. And it's a video of me in a fluffy jacket and like my cargo shorts just dancing really gently, being like, "Are you trans? Do you want a community?" And it's like,
Dangerous.
how is that a problem? And then from that point onwards, our account got shadow banned, literally from our first post onwards. So we just carried on posting on it. You'll probably know more about like how to fix this than I do, but I don't know. I do the social media, but I don't do social media, if that makes sense. Yeah, like, anyway, yeah. But,
I would say that since whenever I do a post about like trans things or queer posts on the Fold account, the amount of messages we get, private messages from people that don't even follow us, are just ridiculous. And it's like they'll pick flaws in our posts, then they'll try and say, actually this is it, or actually that. Or when we did a post about supporting, some of our friends were attacked at the Istanbul Pride, and we did a post about that, and we had about 100 messages come in, and I spent pretty much the whole afternoon basically filtering the comments that were coming in, because just the amount of messages that come in. And it's like, if you could show this much support, like, at any other time, that'd be great, but like, why a surface at the one time that we're trying to do something good? It's like, you don't show your face on any of the other posts that we do, and yet everyone comes out of the woodwork when it's time to talk about pride issues or something like that. It's like, it's ridiculous. Although I would say that growing up as someone like who perhaps doesn't fit like a traditional trans view or something like that, like I'm wearing basketball shorts, and like I struggle to kind of relate to anyone that I could see on TV, or because TV like was such a stereotype of like such a negative stereotype of trans people, and I couldn't really relate to anyone. So I would say that having access to the internet showed me people on the other side of the world that I did relate to, and so it kind of made me kind of feel like I wasn't alone. So I would say it does have good points and it does have benefits, but at the same time, it's a nasty world.
Yeah, it can be really toxic, but yeah, I agree with you. It's like, there's obviously the negative side where it can be like a real sort of platform for hate and be really toxic. But at the same time, positively, you can find allies and you can find people that, you know, are in the same boat as you and share those stories and maybe halve your problems by having people that you can talk to that have experienced it for real. So, yeah, it's kind of like, you know, bittersweet, isn't it? It's like, there's great positive reasons behind with the social media, but it can be just as like heartbreaking as well. And it can destroy you just as much as it can elevate you. It's it's a hard one.
Just the fuck Instagram for trying to make us be TikTok, because none of our posts are getting engaged with for Inferno or like whatever. And it's just like, oh God, I don't want to make fucking reels. I don't want to do TikTok videos. I'm not that girl. Like, I want to take a step back from social media. I don't want to be on it more. So please fuck off. That's my 2 cents.
No, I completely agree with that. Solid agreement on that one. So, Lewis again, actually. As a club brand, Inferno has gone from strength to strength, inspiring a loyal following and recognition from institutions such as the ICA. In your opinion, what is it about the party that's made it a focal point for LGBTQ plus expression and joy?
Yeah, I think just, well, we initially started Inferno because the scene was so white and so masked and so fucking gay that every party was playing house music and pop music and disco. And it's like, fab. I love those kinds of music. But when it's every single club night and every single venue, it gets fucking boring. And I was like, I need to start something new. I just left art school. A lot of my other peers who were like radical queer performance artists weren't being given space within institutions. I was sick of listening to that kind of music. So we kind of started doing this thing where we were playing techno and then platforming our friends who were like radical queer performance artists doing really fucked up, fabulous work. And that's kind of like how it started. And I think just be authentic, you know, I think that's the main thing. Like, what is your purpose? And be authentic and true to that. I think, like, don't just do something because oh, you want to put a night on and make some money. It's not about that. It's a lot of love and hard work and dedication.
Make some money.
I know, like, yeah. So yeah, that basically just be authentic. Like, figure out what the thing is that you want to do and like why you want to do it, and like how will that serve your community. For me, it was like give people another space to dance to something, for space for the fucking freaks and the weirdos and the misfits who did not conform to that white, masculine, muscle Mary stereotype 8 years ago, and being like, giving them space to thrive, make work, DJ. And that's kind of like the ethos that's kind of carried on with Inferno now. So yeah.
Wonderful. So we're coming to a close now, so I want to raise through a question for each of you. Let's see if we can do it. So Judy, Fabric has an amazing reputation in dance music. Your platform's some of the biggest artists of the last decade. I mean, it's solid stuff, you know. It's a big club. You've got a capacity of 1,600. How do you balance kind of mainstream success with also dealing with smaller demographic groups, like you were saying earlier, that might find themselves a little bit lost in a mainstream club, but you still want their vibe and their participation? How do you do that?
Yeah, I guess with Fabric is like we've always sort of almost champion the underdog kind of thing, and we've always sort of done that from day one, obviously alongside established artists as well, and then in the last 10 years we kind of had to sort of rolled a little bit with how the landscape had changed, and it was sort of turning into a little bit like headline culture, so we had to sort of do a bit more nights, sort of catering for more headliners, but then that kind of backfired a little bit. It was too much. People were expecting always like a big artist all the time, and you just can't sustain that like on a weekly basis. So for us, I guess the way we balance it is that the bigger nights allow the other nights to happen, you know. So we're always doing things for love. We're not doing things for profit. Sometimes I think that we should become a non-profit making company because we don't make that much profit anymore. We've got such high overheads and stuff from our location and where we are. So, you know, it is a big love thing, and it's like we will do the nights that have to be there. All those underground nights, they're a huge part of what we are, and we need them to be educating and evolving the club. Those communities need to be represented at the club all the time. So, yeah, we still have the big nights that will get money, but as I said, they finance the other ones, and then we don't have that pressure of the more underground nights having to make you any money. They don't have to. They just need to be good. You know, that's the main premise with those. So, and we've been sort of trying a few more things now, introducing more communities into the club since the pandemic, because, like you said, I feel people are much more open-minded and much more open to different types of nights and different kinds of crews and people coming into the club. And I'm back on that mission, that old school mission of bringing the dance floors back to being much more inclusive and very mixed, and how they were, like when in '99, you know, when the Acid House and all that came along, all the different types of people you would see on the dance floor. That's my mission, to get the club back to that kind of vibe, where everybody, whatever their gender, genre, like whatever they're into, feels safe within our club. And sort of even doing sort of nights like Crossbreed, doing those at the club, which we'd never have thought to do them at the club in like, you know, 10 years ago. But to be able to do those kind of nights, and obviously we need to be educated. We've got a huge, long way to go. But we're taking advice, I feel, from the right people, talking to the right communities, and we won't deliver anything until we're 100% sure that we can execute it in the right way. And that is like, there's so much to do. It's like we have to train new staff, you know, train the staff. And like, that's the thing, is like with the security and people like that, I find that some of the nights that we've done, they've been a little bit more like out there, or a little bit more like, you know, not to the normal stereotype of who would normally come to a club. I feel like I completely lost my point. They're doing it you now. But, so, yeah, the security, that was it, yeah, thank you. So what we find is like, when we do a night like He, She, They, or like a queer party, when we do a party like that, we have to brief all the staff, we have to brief the security, we have to make sure that we have a team that's accepting and open. We have to do way more than we would do for a normal a night that's a general Saturday night at the club. We have to really educate the staff of how we want them to act. But it's very difficult when you've got staff that are not the same every week, you've got a different security team the next week and so on. So you're trying to train them to be able to treat people how you want them to be treated. And it's really hard. Yeah. It's really hard. I do feel like we've got a really long way to go to make everybody feel completely safe in the club and comfortable, you know. But we're doing it, and we are, as I said, and we are taking advice, I feel, from the right people to make sure it does happen. So,
great. Okay.
Watch this space for more,
really good.
basically.
So Charlie, I've read a little bit about the Trans Creative Collective, and I'd like to know more about your thought process on creating the project. What was it that made you feel it was an idea that's time has come?
I'll keep my answer short.
That's okay.
Basically, this kind of stemmed out of 2021 International Women's Day. Yep, it was 2021. And Abbey Road Studios asked me if I could do a talk for them. And this is, at this point, my pronouns were she, they. I was in sort of like a place of like sign transition. I had changed my name, but I was like, okay. And then I did it, and then I felt so icky afterwards. I didn't like it at all. I was like, I'm just not, like, they talked about like female and women and everything, like, and that is a completely valid entity. Like, that is so important, and without that part of the community, there wouldn't even be the springboard for me that I've had throughout my career without it. I rang my best friend Max, crying, and was like, I can't do this. Like, I feel really uncomfortable that I've now been like categorized as a woman and all of this stuff, but like I identify non-binary trans masc kind of thing. And then he was like, for context, Max is a trans guy. He was like, well, don't worry, it's International Trans Day of Visibility in like 3 weeks, so we can get together and like do something there. But obviously it's still the pandemic, like during this time. So I was like, yeah, okay. And I'm the kind of person, I do not like wallow for long. And I was like, you know what? We should do a documentary with Abbey Road Studios for trans visibility of International Trans Day. So I rang them up and said, so what are you doing for International Trans Day Visibility, since you did something for women's international visibility? And they were like, do you have anything in mind? And I was like, yes. So then in the space of 3 weeks, on our personal social media, we put out a call out looking for a trans artist to come be part of the team. We made to come perform, and the idea was that we would record one song, film it, and then film a documentary about our experiences as being transgender in the studio and the music industry, which we did. In 3 weeks, we got everyone together, filmed it, edited it, and released it, and the Gay Times did a piece on it coming out. And then when we were doing the Zoom talk afterwards, there was like 50 people or something watching it who were all trans music producers, creators, engineers. And I was like, I had no idea there was even that many out there. So then whilst the Zoom's happening and we're like doing this official Abbey Road thing, I was on Google, like Excel spreadsheet, making a spreadsheet. And then at the end, I was like, so we've super planned this ahead. Just because there's so many amazing people here, we would really love to like collate everyone's data. So if you're comfortable, if you put your name into this spreadsheet, then we can keep a log of you. And if there's stuff in the future that we want to be a part of, or that you want to be a part of, we'll contact you if you're comfortable with that. Everyone put their name in. Suddenly we had this like mini directory, and then we're like, we need to do something more with this. Like, oh my God. Like, we didn't even know there was this many people. So then we spent the next 8 months developing this concept, which was with me, Max, and then 2 of the other people, Jesley and Nelly, who were in the documentary with us. And then in January, we officially launched the TCC, and then the team just grew. Within the first week, we went from like 3 to 5, and then by the end of like the 3rd week, I think we had a team of 7, and it's all volunteer based, and we just like we put on these events, and then it was like we'd been going for 2 months, and then we decided a month in we were going to put on our first event. So we announced it 2 weeks before we were doing the event, and it sold out, and the capacity, like the waiting list was longer than the capacity for the event in the first place. And we were just like, there is a huge need for this. And it wasn't a club night, and I think that's really important and valid in that space, but it was a daytime thing, and it was an expo for art, music and film, and we did feedback sessions and things like that. And honestly, it was just Amazing. I can't remember what the actual question was, but there's
About
just to
the
give
genesis,
some context
and
on.
you've answered that wonderfully, and it's just obviously needed because the interest has exploded. So
We ended up like having to put an after party on that day. Like we announced it like on that day, and then that was like completely oversubscribed. And then we've just been doing these socials and workshops, and like our workshop like sold out in like 4 hours. Like so we're now upscaling the stuff that we're doing. We've got good plug time, I guess. We've got an event on the 18th of August at Strong Room Studios in Shoreditch. If anyone is around, you should just find our handle is @the.tcc if you want to follow it and find out more. But it'd be lovely to see anyone who wants to come down. It's just gonna be like you should all come. It'll be a great night. DJs, everything. There we go. That's the TCC plug.
thank you. So final question for this panel, and it's for you, T. Yeah, I'm looking at you. So Fold have highlighted some posts that you've made about queer representation in the media, which I thought was really interesting to see and impressive for a club like Fold. How did it feel to be platformed in this way, and what can other organisations learn about Fold's approach?
I mean, as I said earlier, it's about using your voice. Like if you have that platform, it's important to use that voice. I think it'd be quite easy just to put on queer events and call it a day and kind of just advertise it and then move on. And I don't think that's enough anymore. Like I don't think that was ever enough. But especially now, I think as we were talking earlier about social media being quite negative to lots of people, I think if we can try and use social media in a good way, in a positive way, like if I can put queer resources on people's feed as well as selfies of other people, then that's all the better. Then I think it's important to drive change, not just take advantage of change. It's important to drive it too, and then hopefully it can spread to not just Fold, but also in the wider network. And like I was working at a venue last night as a stage manager, and I was going to the women's toilets, and then a security guard stepped in front of me, stopped me. I was like, "Oh, the men's toilets are over that side." I was like, you just, because you don't expect that still to happen, and it's kind of like, it just shows us so far to go. There's so much more work to do, and so it's not just our community, but it's the wider community as well. That if other people can see that, then they can take it to their venues and other places as well.
Yeah, that was kind of like, even though I was rambling, that was kind of one of the points I was trying to make in terms of like, you might have all the best intentions with your community, but then when you try to, like when we're trying to execute a night at the club that might be different, then you might have like come across security like that who are just not educated and you're trying to give them how it is and show them how it is, but they still don't quite get it. And yeah, this is like one of our challenges that we find. You were saying like what the challenges you sort of find, and that is definitely one of them. It's like just trying to re-educate people to be more accepting and be more informed about stuff. So that's where I find the most challenge really, is like with other people outside of the community that you need to work,
Mm-hmm. Do you think, like, if you're getting contractors in from the outside, like, for example, a security firm, do you think you could maybe put in part of the contract for Fabric where they have to be trained on LGBT issues, especially trans issues, and maybe not assume anybody's gender or, like,
That's what we wanted to do. When we reopened, that was one of the things we had in mind to do, and to actually, like, get our own sort of team. But because of the global pandemic and the hospitality shortage and everything, this idea has been really, really tough to execute. There's just no staff, So I think it's still something that we're working on, and we're trying to do just that. And we will get there, but just need more and more people like within the community that want to do those kind of roles, to be in those roles, I always think there should be like an actual central place where there's people with those kind of that kind of ethos and that kind of mindset, that you know where to go to find them almost, It's like, maybe that's something that we need to set up.
There we go, all the plans are being made.
Recruiting for...
Well, change is a messy process, but it's necessary. So I just want to say thank you to Lewis, Judy, Charlie, and T for joining me today. If we give them a round of applause, please. And that's our communities panel closed. Please stay for the rest of the entertainment. Incredible performances coming up. And see you around later.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
you for having us.